welcome to Nourishing the Mother, where inspired women talk about the journey of motherhood through the common thread of parenting, relationship, and sexuality as a path to consciousness. We ask, in what ways can we show up more fully, live more meaningfully, parent more wholly, and love more unconditionally? How can we mine the wisdom from the experiences of our lives and expand into those challenges? If you are here, you care about paving a path of conscious and intentional motherhood, connected with yourself and your gifts, and also illuminating your children in theirs, so we may raise more whole humans who can impact this world in a more humane way. And if you feel like giving a little back to this free content, please become a patron of the show and receive extra member benefits for less than a coffee a month. Or you can leave a review on iTunes and Facebook, all of which helps the podcast keep going and reach more mamas who need this type of tonic for the soul. Head on over to patreon.com/NTM podcast to find out more. We are Julie Tenner and Bridget Wood, and we are so grateful you're here.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast, we have a very special guest, gorgeous Carlie Maree, who, as you will likely already know, and if you don't, you're about to, is our business coach who we absolutely adore and works in the most glorious goddess feminine light. And today we are here to share some of her magic with you in a podcast. It gets to feel good, busting the sacrifice myth. So before we jump into that glorious conversation, say hello, Carlie, and then I'm going to remind everyone to jump onto our website to sign up for a newsletter. Say hi.
Hi, here I am. Hello.
So we'd love to remind you, jump onto nourishingthemother.com.au, scroll on down to the red banner, slot on in your email, and you will join our email group where once a month at the moment we send you out an email, though we're working on making that more streamlined, where you get everything that is Nourishing the Mother, all the links, all the drops, all the places to be, check out and move further. So if you would love a little bit more Nourishing the Mother in your week, then please sign up at nourishingthemother.com.au. So glorious Carlie, it is such an honour to have you on here with us. You have without doubt been a shining light and a beacon of change in both of our lives, and certainly within the life of Nourishing the Mother. So where do you want to roll, Bridge? Jump on in, mate.
I'm just thinking about the topic of this podcast and just like, where do we even begin? Because we've called this podcast, It Gets to Feel Good, Busting the Sacrifice Myth. And I just think that is such a, like, it began for us with our program that we ran, You Totally Can, a little while ago, and which really just blew our worlds open. All of these incredible women who are doing this amazing work in the world and having a really big focus on their families. And Carlie gives such profound permission for women to just do their work in the world or do what lights them up in a way that doesn't have to take away from what's also deeply meaningful in their life. It doesn't have to be an either or. And that's super, super powerful and quite beautiful to witness unfolding in ourselves, but also in terms of what we've been able to show up with and create in the world of Nourishing the Mother under your guidance. So I'm just like percolating in the magic of it right now.
Yeah. So, Carlie, first off, we'd love you to share maybe a little bit about who you are and how you got to doing the magic in the world that you're doing at the moment.
Yeah. So I guess I became a mother about nearly 7 years ago, and I had every intention of going back to the dream job that I was in. I was changing the world. I was working in not-for-profit, absolutely loved my job, and then became a mother and questioned everything I thought I knew about myself and what I wanted. And I ended up starting a little business as a resume writer and as a virtual assistant from home, using sort of the I had a little bit of, I guess, management background, leadership background from being in my corporate gigs. And I ended up building a really successful little resume writing business and then teaching a bunch of other, mostly mothers actually, how to run their own little resume writing business. And they all had a whole bunch of success, and then they wanted me to coach them on how to like grow bigger and how to, you know, manage the money that was coming in and how to manage their time so they could take on more clients. And so I kind of fell into this role of business coach, and I just wanted to make a difference. I just wanted to help people as far as writing resumes. And throughout that time, I did some study, I learned some coaching skills and things like that. In the middle of all that, my marriage fell to pieces. And I was devastated, and I can only describe it as broken on the floor. And that was a couple of years ago, maybe 4 years ago. And then I went on this real, I guess I had been on some sort of personal development journey around growing my business and learning about, you know, motivation and things like that. But then when I was broken in bits, I started a whole other journey around, I guess, spiritual nourishment, I suppose, like figuring out how energy works and how I work and how to be okay. And throughout that process, I discovered what I now call soul modes, which was through this journey of radical self-care I went on. I worked out some things about myself that turned out to be something that is actually in a lot of women, and it's this energetic sequence we move through. And because I was already fascinated by motivation, all these pieces started to come together. And fast forward a few years, I'm now a Wall Street Journal bestselling author, working with hundreds of clients all around the world, and having the honor of talking to beautiful, incredible women like you about really exciting stuff and really helping people to make a difference in the world, particularly women. I affectionately call us the mad ones. The mad stands for make a difference. For people like us who just have this passion inside of us, and really figuring out how we can do that in really beautiful ways without having to give anything up. And I guess that's why we thought it would be good to talk about sacrifice here, because I just don't believe sacrifice is required in order to have success. And so this is a really cool topic, and that's how I got here to this point.
Magnificent. Before we move on to that, though, I would really dearly love for you to give a wrap on soul modes, because actually it was that concept that it was Bridget who introduced me to your work originally. She's like, look, I know of this coach and I really think we should look at her. And I started delving into your work, and I was like, holy shit, we need this, because we'd been living in a world of masculine business and it really stopped working for us. It was like the cogs were just turning so excruciatingly. It was like a stone grind. And here was this woman who was like, yeah, that's because that's only one masculine way of doing business, and here's how I see the world. So I would love for you to share what that looks like, because it was that concept that went, I get it in my personal life, and I get it in my love life, and I get it in my parenting, and yet it was totally missing as a conversation in business. And I think it's that radically transformed the capacity that Bridget and I found for business and motherhood, which then requires no sacrifice. So I'm wondering if we could start at that conversation around what soul modes is, and if you could walk us through those 4 modes.
Yeah, for sure. I would love to. So I suppose what I found, as I said, it's a pattern. So what I found was that the tagline is, you're not one ordinary woman, you're 4 extraordinary ones. And I kind of identified these 4 different modes that we move through in order, and it helps us to understand how we talk about masculine and feminine energy, and you've taught me so much about that, and how we move we slide up and down that kind of sliding scale, right? And there's also, we kind of move from the being energy to the doing energy and back to the being energy again. And sometimes the doing energy feels quite masculine, and sometimes the doing energy actually can feel quite feminine but still powerful. And it can feel really complicated, the different energetic states that we get in. And sometimes in our being states, we want stillness and nothingness, and other times we want presence and connection, but it's still a being state. And that sounds kind of complicated, but it's actually really simple when you understand the modes, because we move through 4 different energetic states: wild mode, bear mode, super mode, and sparkle mode. And my research shows that we always go through them in the same order. And I talk about women, right? What I actually mean is feminine core beings, which is a term that you taught me, which really helped me to make sense of it, because I'm like, I'm not sure that it's all women, and I think it's actually some men too. But it's feminine core beings, and the feminine can feel like this, like creative chaos, right? But it's actually quite cyclical, which makes perfect sense when we think about, you know, the lunar cycle and our menstrual cycle and all these other cycles that we move through. That we also have this energetic cycle, this soul cycle, where the reason why I call it a soul cycle is because it's based on kind of what we're yearning for on a soul level, like really, really deep level. You know how it's like, I'm yearning for some time alone. Like, I don't just need it, like I need it on a soul level. Like, my soul needs for me to have some time alone, or my soul needs for me to get some things done. Or my soul needs me to like cut my hair short or dye it red, like things like that. And I'll tell you about the 4 modes, because that's usually when people go, okay, I'm really resonating now. So wild mode is that state we get in where we're quite fiery. It's this really fire energy, and we just kind of lose all tolerance for anything in our lives that aren't serving us. So often it's entirely possible that you guys decided to make this podcast in wild mode. Maybe you were both in wild mode, right? It's often when we go like, I'm going to do something big. You probably went, I'm going to make Queen School. Let's do it. Like, that's kind of that wild mode energy. I'm going to do something big and bold. It's the only time I ever wear leopard print is when I'm in wild mode, right? Like, we're a little bit more bold. And then after wild mode, it's a beautiful energy. It's a really cool energy, except for when we don't know what it is and we're just like, what is wrong with me? If we don't have those outlets.
Can I interrupt you 1 second before you move on?
Yes.
Do you know, I have your voice ringing in my head sometimes when I notice I'm in wild mode now, which is this sentence, and it stays in my head: don't waste your wild mode only on cleaning the house. Because when I get in wild mode, I'm like a tornado through the house. Like, the house has to be clean and everything has to be completely structured. And I'm like, don't waste it on this. What other area of life are you cleaning out? So I just wanted to let you know that that's so powerfully in me. And I wonder if you could just riff on that a little bit, because I think often women will do that we will, in inverted commas, use the energy for something that perhaps is less soul aligned than what you could train that energy towards.
Like, an example of that is also like the rage clean, for example. You know, when you get to that point of like the rage clean, it's like, I'm feeling so wild, I need to take that energy out on something, so I'll rage clean my house. That's 100%. That's what resonates for me.
Yeah, 100%. Or you want to throw everything out. Like, I've been known to get rid of a lot of my kids' toys and half my wardrobe in a wild mode. It's a time for like decluttering, right? But generally it's like an energetic declutter that needs to happen. The stuff that's inside of you that needs to be created and brought out, we don't always kind of realize that. We don't always have that kind of level of self-awareness. So we're just like, oh, I'm going to take it out of my house. Which is fine, except if you want to do your work in the world, if you really want to show up and say, you know, create a podcast or build a business or write a book, that wild energy that you've got, if you channel it into that creative outlet, you'll create something really extraordinary. And it's a really, really cool energy to be in. And it's really cool to be able to understand when you're in it, because also sometimes it gets taken out on your family. Because the wild woman inside of you craves freedom. So if kids are being really full on and asking for a lot, and they feel like they're kind of taking your freedom from you, it can be really easy to get really snappy, right? So one of the things you guys have taught me is when I'm in my wild mode and I can't necessarily, like, my kids are kind of needing me in those moments, to find ways to be able to bring that energy out. So it might be like, okay, let's wrestle, and kind of like embrace it. And again, you guys have taught me around like finding my edges, and like that wrestling, roughhousing play was an edge for me. I always found that really hard. But I've discovered that when I'm in my wild mode, if I can just go, okay, like, let's do it, and wrestle or dance or paint each other's bodies or do something that feels kind of wild, my kids actually love that energy, and it's less likely that I'm going to be snapping at everyone if I can just be like, look, let's just like forget about the house and actually embrace this chaos. Our wild women can be really cool in parenting, but particularly, if there's like a creative outlet. So sometimes, you know, I might feel like I just need to write. And I'll just say to my partner, this gives us a really cool kind of way to communicate and for me to help him to know what I need, like how he can best support me and provide for me in those moments where he's like, you're a bit wild, babe, because he can just tell, like, with my energy, as soon as he comes in, he knows, and he's like, what do you need? And I'm like, I need to write. He's like, just go write, because he knows that as soon as I get that, like, out of my body, because writing's my creative practice, I'm going to feel so much better, and I'm going to be such a better energy in the house, and my wild energy won't come out of snapping and yelling at everybody. It'll come out more playful and fun because I've kind of unleashed it a little bit.
Delicious. Please continue on your soul modes journey.
Yeah, so I mean, wild mode is great because we decide what we want to do. I mean, have you ever, decluttered your whole house and just ripped everything out and go like, we're getting rid of all this stuff, and then you bag it all up and then it sits there ready to go get donated to the op shop, and it sits there for like ages because you've shifted. So after wild mode comes bear mode. And I know, Julie, you said to me recently, I'm feeling super beary. We were going to catch up when we were allowed to do that. And you were like, I'm super beary today. And I'm like, cool, I get it. And that's a really beautiful and neutral way to be able to say to someone, like, I'm just not up for humans today. I need to actually really go internal and do some really beautiful spiritual nourishment or energetic nourishment that doesn't actually involve, interacting with other people. Particularly if you're an introvert, like really alone time is fuel when you're an introvert. And it's really beautiful to understand that energy. Yeah, it's cool. Hey.
I just actually, to be honest with you, I feel like if you can pick a favourite child, I'm sure you can't, but bear mode would be mine. I'm like, I love it so hard for the permission of when you dive deep, what you're able to really uncover and then bloom outwards with. And I love that it's this super neutral conversation where you and I just have that framework, and I can say, and to Bridget, I'm like so beary, or I'm bearing so hard today, I just like can't. And you're like, yeah, babe, I get it. Go do your thing. Like, I just even love that. Just permission and feminine juiciness that's just this acknowledgement of what that is for each other. Like, and in business, like, I also want you to talk about bear mode in business, because that also, I would get so super shamey on myself in business when I was bearing, versus your frame, which is like, just really get into it and then you'll really come out of it. And I was like, oh my gosh. So it's like, I just want you to know, if I could pick a favourite, it would actually be that.
Yeah, that's amazing. A lot of people, it's not their favorite at all, because it can really feel like a crisis of confidence, right? But when you are as tooled up as you guys are, and, we get to be, when we really go on this journey of figuring out what our practices are, what our tools are, that we can pull out when we can be like, I'm going into the bear cave. We can feel like it's like going into a dark cave without a torch. For someone who doesn't understand what bear mode is and kind of get to know what they need, it's like going into this dark cave without a torch. But when you're going into the cave, you've got a torch and a fire lighter and a sleeping bag and everything. You can go in there well resourced. Like, I'm questioning everything about myself right now. I'm telling myself all sorts of stories about how I have no value at all in my work or in anything. Nobody likes me. Everybody's laughing at me. All that sort of stuff that can come up. But you're going in there going, I know these are stories, and I'm going to go and I'm going to do it's like dancing with the demons in the dark. You go in and you do that work and you come out a whole other person. It's pretty cool.
I almost just want you to hit replay and say that all over again.
How many times do you need to hear it, right? Like, we need the reminders. And
all the time.
It's such a permission-giving exercise in like saying, this is a just as beautiful function of my wholeness as like sparkle mode, which can feel really good, but is just often the other side. Like, if we consider sparkle as like your light and bear as your dark, if you want to put a label on it, it's like saying all of this is beautiful and all of this needs to be here for the functioning of the whole. And I mean, this is kind of countercultural, right? Like, compared to sort of mainstream masculine dominated patriarchal, work structured society. This is actually going, hey, that part of you that wants to retreat, love on it, because it's part of your brilliance.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's a lot of people that have said to me that it's been the most life-changing thing in my work for them is to know what bear mode is, because every time they hit bear mode before, they thought that everything that they were telling themselves was just truth and that there was something wrong with them. And we have this society that says if you don't want to get out of bed, there's definitely something wrong with you and you should probably go see someone about that, right? And I get that. Like if it never goes away, it's not bear mode. But if it kind of happens and you kind of can do your work and nurture yourself and shift the stuff that's ready to be moved through it has to come up to the surface. It has to be dredged. It kind of has to be felt on its way out. It has to be dredged up from the bottom to clear the channel, right? And so nothing's going to come up that isn't ready to come up. But if you're on a big journey of growth, like if you're building a business and stepping out and doing bigger things than you had been before, then there's a whole bunch of stuff to be dredged up and shed. So bear modes can get really big when you're doing big work in the world.
Yeah, I would just love to just riff on that just a little bit longer. Are you okay with that? Are you in for that? So I would just love you to just redefine or re-say out loud for everybody that has that internal voice what some of the things that bear modes say because I know Bridget and I even talk about this where we'll like text each other going, nah, I've got nothing. I've got no good about me. There's nothing in the world that I can do. Like I just really want to talk about, I would love to hear from you all those sentences that you hear from women and that exist in our psyche. And then I would just love for you to hear how you work with that and how you're like, yeah, and then it moves. So I just would really love just to stick on that a little longer.
Yeah, I think each person has a bit of a different kind of bear script, right? Like I always knew I was hitting bear mode when I would get this little idea that the school mums all hate me.
This is so interesting.
Yeah, it was.
I didn't know bear mode was different for everyone. I didn't know that.
Well, I guess like what it says to you is different. So what comes up is like, you find your edges, right? It's like where we feel like we often will say like, I'm so exhausted. I'm just at capacity. It's too much. I need. Like it's like we need nothingness. I need stillness. I need everybody to leave me alone externally so that I can do this big, deep dive inside of myself. And it can feel like numbness. It can feel like a complete crisis of confidence. But for me, it's usually about like everybody's laughing at you. Everybody thinks you're ridiculous. Your success isn't going to last. Those sorts of things. And earlier on, I think I would just kind of get insecure. Like I sort of want to climb up on Darren's lap, my partner, and have him tell me like, you love me, right? Like, of course he does. But in those moments, it's like, can you just tell me I'm pretty? Whereas in wild mode, I'm like, I am a goddess. Everybody bow down. Like it's that kind of energy. Whereas in bear mode, it's like, oh, I don't know. I think I look a bit old now. Don't you think?
Good. So this is so good. I love that. I love this concept that bear mode is whatever it is that you're currently processing as well. I love that idea that it just simmers. So let's be super real. Bridget, what is your bear mode narrative?
Well, because mine manifests physically, so I would often hit it whenever I was like running an event, and so I would like just like get massive anxiety to the point of like almost needing to like I'd be nauseous with anxiety. I'd be like losing my voice. I'd be like, no one wants to hear me. If I don't show up, it won't matter. Like, it's a massive like recoiling of self that kind of says, and also like self-sabotage kind of behaviors, like where I'll actually intentionally like almost trip myself up and not do the thing because no one wants it anyway. Like I'll convince myself that there's nothing to offer here, and that I shouldn't dream bigger than this because this is enough, and like kind of talking yourself away from what you're deeply desiring as a way to self-protect, as a way to kind of cave inwards, right? Like not only choose to find the cave, but actually my physical body is almost like caving in response to everything that I'm telling myself and everything that I'm also seeking the world to tell me so that I can believe it, right? Because I think we then filter our world to see all the reasons why at that time. Whereas I think when we move into other modes, it's like, oh, I do say some cool stuff, and I do have something to offer, you know? Like, I think that what we filter our world by in each of those modes is also matching the mode too. Yeah.
So what do you say to women, Carlie, when they're in bear mode? Like, what's your advice for bear mode TLC and moving through?
I actually made this beautiful little 5-minute recording on my podcast, which is called Go Hack Yourself, by the way, over there.
We will put all of your links in the show notes, so please go there to check it out.
So I recorded this little 5-minute recording, which was one day I woke up in bear mode and I just wrote down what I needed to hear. I basically just channeled this kind of like couple of pages of it's okay, you're okay, this is happening for a reason, nothing is wrong right now. And I recorded it, and a lot of people listen to it when they're in bear mode and they say it just brings them to tears, and it's exactly what they need to hear in those moments. But ultimately the message is, it's really special. It came out of nowhere. And I think the kind of overall message of it is you are not broken. This is everything that's happening right now is happening for a reason so that you can grow. You're being shown what is ready to move through now. You're being shown what is ready to leave behind now. Because I work with a lot of really high-achieving women, really doing big things in the world, right? And so there's a lot of stuff for them to let go of, a lot of stories that people have told them. I know for me, what used to come up in my bear mode was, you're just a girl. And that was my dad. Like, that was the message that I got from him, right? Like, you're just a girl. And so that would come up a lot. And those things that people have said to you throughout your life that kind of built beliefs and all formed into this kind of self-identity, when they need to shift because of what you've decided you're going to do in your life, right? Like you want to, you decide you want to get really fit and healthy, or you decide something you want to do in your life. And then you start to, all these stories come up. It's like the barrier between the conscious and the subconscious mind turns to tissue paper. The stuff that's rattling around down there in the subconscious is kind of comes up as like whispers. I describe it a bit like, to use another analogy, it's like there's a party in your house. Imagine there's a really loud party in the house, and then the party's over and everybody leaves and the music gets turned off, and suddenly you can hear that dripping tap somewhere in the house that needs to be turned off, like it needs attention. But you needed the party to stop so you could hear the dripping tap. And it's a bit like that, those little whispers in the background that are always there because they're sitting there in your subconscious. You need enough quiet up there in your mind for you to be able to hear them so you can address them, so you can kind of question them, journal on them, work through them, use your practices, and then you can kind of leave them behind. But the quietness feels like fogginess. It feels like forgetfulness. I speak really slowly in bear mode, and I just forget everything and have mind blanks. You can get really kind of like foggy and a bit dopey, and, I think that has to happen. But when you're like running a business and doing all the things and you build your whole identity on, I get things done, and then suddenly you're not that person, you can get really like, who even am I? What even can I do? What am I capable of? And we live in a society that really congratulates and puts on a pedestal the masculine and the productive, the output, the results. And in bear mode, the work that's happening is all very internal. It doesn't look like much on the outside, but it's actually really important work.
So delicious. I loved it.
Thanks.
So let's move on. What comes next?
What comes next is super mode. And look, I love super mode because I've got things to do, right? And we need it. As you said to me, I think it might be in Queen's School, you say, or somewhere, we need the masculine because or else we wouldn't get anything done, right? Like we kind of need that part of ourselves that does want structure. So when we hit super mode is usually when we say things like, I just need more structure. I just need a routine. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get up early every Monday and I'm going to plan my week and I'm going to have this wall planner and I'm going to color code it and I'm going to stick to that. And I'm going to do this 12-week boot camp and I'm going to lose 1 kilo every week and this is what I'm going to achieve by this date, right? And we almost never stick to it, right? And the reason we don't stick to it is because we're not in super mode all the time. So those drivers, this is what I talk about motivational intelligence, right? It's about knowing what motivates us, what drives us, and what holds us back. And accountability to a target motivates the masculine. It doesn't motivate the feminine. But when we're in super mode, we are in our most masculine state. And so when we're in that state, we really feel drawn to all of those things, and we think this is going to work. This is who I am now. I'm an organized person now because I feel really organized right now. That's what this is going to be the answer. This is a secret key to my life. And then so we set up all this structure, then we don't stick to it, and then we kick ourselves and tell ourselves we're not consistent, we're never going to amount to anything, and it's bullshit.
Okay, that conversation's coming next. Let's finish off soul modes.
So look, super mode's great, but we can't stay in that energy all the time, and a lot of people wish that they could stay in that energy all the time. But as we know, like, our relationships would be affected. Our kids would feel that. I get a bit controlling and a bit bossy in super mode. I want it done now. I want, right, it's dinner time, 6 o'clock, everyone at the table, let's go. I can be a bit drill sergeant-ish. And what I'm learning is that's not what my kids respond best to. And so I get very so I get there like, right, strict bedtimes at 7 o'clock, everybody let's go. But then in sparkle mode, I'm like, oh, it's 7:30, maybe we should start to think about bedtime, and I'm having too much fun. And so this is, why we can feel like we're all over the place. We want one thing one day and something else the next.
So sparkle mode feels like, what's the narrative of sparkle mode?
Oh, sparkle mode shows up differently in different people. It's a bit like kind of the love languages, right? Like, because we crave connection and presence. So for me, it's always been about external. I want connection. I want my lover to be there. I want him to smooch with me. I'm very affectionate. I will often put on a floral dress, and I will curl my hair, and I'll put on some lip gloss. So I'm very interested in adornment in sparkle mode. But what I've found since I've been, following you guys and doing more work around sort of embodiment and things like that, I've actually found that the presence I feel in sparkle mode now is also very much feeling present in my body. And that's not something I was really taught. That's something I'm learning in my 30s, is being present in my body. And the concept of like feeling pleasure. Like when you're in sparkle mode and you like draw your fingernails up your arm, goes through your whole body. Like it feels nice anytime, but do it in sparkle mode and it feels different, right? And like
that's
kissing
amazing.
in sparkle mode just feels different. It's like we're just these like pleasure, love, presence, connection machines, but we have no focus. I've reversed into our garage door 3 times while in sparkle mode. Like I'm like, Tinkerbell, I have no focus whatsoever. Right? It's like tight trying to get out of our garage, like. But, like I should have figured out how to do it by now. But anyway, sparkle mode, I forget everything, but I'm just all love. It's when you find yourself, I sent you a bunch of flowers in sparkle mode because I was just so grateful for you and what you are in my life. Like
please do that again.
It's like we feel gratitude, when, we say we should practice gratitude every day and all of that. But for me, I practice gratitude specifically in sparkle mode. Like I can bring it in at any moment. It's one of my tools. But in sparkle mode, it's this energy practice. You can bring yourself to tears. Yeah, it's like cranked up. Sparkle mode's beautiful, and it's when it's most easy to be the aware parent and the present.
Delicious mummy.
I can hold space for my kids' feelings like a ninja, right?
And you can just eat them.
It's easy.
Absolutely. Just like, I love you so much. It's like overwhelming.
Completely. And you want to like watch them sleep, and like you just look at like the detail of all their little eyelashes, and other times it's like, oh, thank God they're in bed. It's like, I don't actually want them to be just asleep. Maybe we should keep them up. That's the extreme, obviously. But it shows up different ways in different people, depending how comfortable you are to ask for connection. Some people find their sparkle mode really hard because they find it really hard to ask for what they want from their partner. And people who are, like really strong introverts can be like, I want to be with people. This feels a bit strange. So figuring out our sparkle mode is actually really powerful. There's a lot you can do with that energy. Particularly goes into like law of attraction and things like that, and working with energy, working with vibration. Sparkle mode's really cool to play with all of that.
I love that so much. I actually really adore that there's that spectrum that you've brought here of it can look like any of these things. What's important is that you find it in yourself. I really love that. That's really beautiful. So, I'm deeply fascinated with these cycles when it applies. I know we're going to get to the no sacrifice bit, but the part that was most life-changing for me in business was working with you and realizing that cycle of, oh my God, I've got nothing. No, I've got everything. Oh my God, I can't follow through. That whole thing where you're kicking yourself. I can't do anything. That's it. I'm flaky Jake. You hinted on it before. What's your riff on that scenario and what do you say to women about that?
Yeah, so I guess understanding how this works helps you to not put the whole thing in the bin every time you hit bear mode, right? Because you know what it is. But also the cool thing about the modes, I have this theory based on the research I've done, but my theory is there are two reasons why this exists, or two that I've discovered so far. One of them is it keeps us moving forwards. In wild mode, we decide what we want in our lives. Bear mode, we clear all the muck that's holding us back from having it. Super mode, we take the productive action and do the things to make the thing happen. And in sparkle mode, we kind of celebrate our results and make sure that everyone, we've all got we have a business that's a family business. It's important that that's when I communicate with my lover and make sure that my kids feel nurtured and all of that. So it keeps us moving forward. So we kind of celebrate, connect in, and then right back around to wild again. What's next? What's the next big project? What's the next big thing? And the other reason I believe it exists is to keep us balanced. So the bear mode energy is very internal. The sparkle mode energy is very external. The wild mode energy is very kind of out there, big picture, pie in the sky. The super mode energy is very detailed and logical and practical. So this whole system, it's like we have this inbuilt calibration system inside of us, but if we don't know it's there, we keep trying to live by everyone else's systems and, these really kind of alpha male, how to do life stuff that's taught, from, the Tony Robbinsons of the world and stuff. And, there's value there. But knowing that we're different, we work differently and that as we move through these patterns, it actually takes us where we need to go. We can have it all. We can have fully connected relationships and be really productive and do the internal work. We can have, there's space for all of those things. If we work with our own flow, we don't have to give anything up. We don't have to work 100 hours a week. I work about 22 hours a week in my business, and my business supports our family quite well, right? And I didn't think that was possible. But the reason I can do it is because I work with my modes. I do my admin in super mode because I'll do it in 20 minutes as opposed to 4 hours. I do my deep, internal work in my bear mode rather than trying to force myself to meditate in super mode when it's actually it's not the right energetic state for me to do it. So you start to be able to actually really quite make magic and do things that other people think aren't possible because you're working with your own momentum and your own flow rather than pushing against it and ending up exhausted and burnt out.
So magnificent. So our title, which was It Gets to Feel Good, Busting the Sacrifice Myth, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, so we have a whole bunch of stories that are sort of fed to us about how you can't have it all, right? And I want my life to be evidence that that's not true. I don't want a successful business if I have to sacrifice my relationships or my health or anything else in order to have it. I've installed the belief on purpose because our beliefs are all just computer programs in our brain. We can delete, install, update. We can change all the programming that we've got. That's the cool thing about the brain, right? Is that we have these programs and we can change them. And I have, purposely installed a belief in my mind that as my business grows, my family, the success of my family does too. The dynamic of my family improves. So does the success of my business. So does the state of my body. It's like a tripod. 3 legs of the tripod, they all grow together. Not like, and if you think about, people talk about work-life balance, right? Like a scale, you've got the right-hand side and left-hand side. As one goes up, the other must go down. And I just think we need to put those scales in the bin because that's not how it works. As your business success increases, you don't have to give up or sacrifice having a great family life. My business allows me to, we homeschool now. My partner's home a lot more now. We have, in order for me to create that, I had to believe it was possible. And I had to be able to see it in my mind without believing I had to sacrifice something in order to have it, because if I believe I have to sacrifice something in order to have it, I'll sabotage it. My subconscious mind will make sure that I'm too tired, too busy, too whatever to make it happen, to protect what I value most, which, you know, my family, and you guys talk a lot about values, right? So if my subconscious mind believes that I have to sacrifice something that I value in order to have my success, my subconscious mind will protect me from creating it, because my values are such a strong driver inside of me, like they are in all of us, right? So we can't just kind of visualize our way towards success in an area when we're running a story, when we've got a program installed from whatever's been taught to us in our lives, that in order to have it, we have to sacrifice something else. So for me, installing that belief has been really important. And understanding soul modes has been really helpful, because I'm like, I have this inbuilt magical calibration system that makes sure my focus is on all the things that matter to me. So that's when I started to see my own magic and got really passionate about helping everyone else see theirs too.
It's such a magic way of looking at values. That sentence hadn't dropped in for me before, and I really love it, that you don't have to be so vigilant, because unconsciously there's a part of you that's always vigilant on what's important to you. Like, that's so beautiful.
Yeah. So if I'm at my laptop and I suddenly get the desire to shut the laptop and go play with my kids, that's my guidance. That's my soul telling me what to do, right? So that's exactly what I'm going to do. If I sit there and push through and be like, no, I promised myself that by 4 o'clock I will have achieved this, this, and this, and I try and just keep myself accountable to a target. This is the thing, like, we're afraid that if we shut the laptop and walk away, it won't get done. But it will, because you'll come back around to super mode. And here's the thing. If you think of it like 4 cups to be filled, we haven't just got 1 cup, we've got 4 cups. You know, we talk about can't pour from an empty cup. As you fill each cup, you'll shift to the next mode. As your bare cup gets filled, you'll shift into super mode. So the more responsive you are to your own energetic state and give yourself what you need, the quicker you'll shift. So if you just go, right, super mode's done, sparkle mode must be here, because suddenly I couldn't think of anything worse than doing the to-do list. I just want to go play outside with my kids barefoot in the sunshine. And you do that, you'll fill that sparkle cup, you'll shift to wild mode, then you'll fill that cup, and you'll be back around to super mode again, and the admin will get done. The problem happens when we try and sort of push through, so to speak. And then we end up getting resentful and being like, oh, my work is taking me away from my kids, and all of that, right? And, of course, there are deadlines and there are things that are scheduled in, and you just kind of make it work, right? Like sometimes when you guys are recording this podcast, one of you's in bear mode and one of you's in wild, and we can kind of feel that as we listen, right? Like, you know, there's some days like Julie's really fiery and other days Bridget's really fiery. Some days you both are.
Yeah.
You know? And so when it's scheduled and you get it done. But I've engineered a lot of freedom into my days. And that's been really important to me. That's something that I value. Freedom is something I really value. And so I love to be able to support other people to do that so that they can be really responsive to their own needs. Like, I can't imagine working a 9 to 5 now and having to go into work in bear mode and wear a uniform and all that stuff. I'm just like, oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, I think I told Julie the story that once when I had a performance review, you know, back in my corporate days, and like this male manager said to me, it's like, some days like you're just so on it. And then other times I'm just not even sure if you're the same person. But that's this, right? Because he's coming at it all masculine. Like, you know, you get here at 9 and you're like a machine and you just...
Consistency. Yeah.
You know, consistency and linear and progress. But yet the truth of the feminine is that we are so cyclical and so, you know, moving with our energy systems that as if we can be in super mode all of the time, or any of those modes all of the time. So if only 20-something-year-old me knew that, right?
What freedom.
What freedom. And
what does that your boss knew that too, right? Like, this is the thing. I think everybody needs to know about this, including, you know, people who are managing teams. And this is why I kind of love that so many people are working remotely and much more flexibly at the moment, because, and I think a lot of people are finding that their productivity is higher and better because they're able to work with their own energetic state. They can work at 10 o'clock at night if it feels good for them to do that, because they might hit their super mode. Quite often I'm up till midnight working because I've hit my super mode at 10 p.m. when I was about to go to bed. Like, a lot of my clients are like, oh, bloody hell, it's 10 p.m. and my super mode has just kicked in. And I'm like, well, you might as well use it, or else you're going to lay there and toss and turn.
Yeah. What does that mean to scaffold in or put in more freedom in your life? What does that mean?
Well, I suppose freedom looks different to different people, right? So it's going to come down to, like, what do you want your days to look like? Because I think a question we don't ask ourselves all that often that maybe we could ask a little bit more is, like, what do I want? And a lot of the time we were sort of brought up thinking or being told that, you know, wait till someone asks you what you want and don't ask for too much, or you're being greedy, or, you know, what do you want now? Oh my God. And we're kind of told that if we're asking for something, we're not being grateful for what we've got. And I think that's some programming a lot of us have got.
It's really big, like, epic, you know, like generational programming.
Yeah, massive. So a huge shift for me has been to go, I'm so grateful for my life that I'm going to ask for more and more and more. I'm going to ask for more. It's like when someone cooks you a delicious meal and then they say, do you want more? And you're like, yeah, that's so delicious. Thank you. I would love more. They're like, okay, cool. Here you go. But you'd be like, oh, no, thanks. I don't want any more. It was delicious, but I don't want any more. Like, they see it as gratitude asking for more. And I feel like that's how the universe works. When I'm like, thank you so much for all this beautiful abundance. I love my life so much. I want even more. Then my experience is the universe responds.
Oh, I love your metaphors.
I love that.
It's so good.
Great. It's so good. Because think about that person cooking that meal. Like, isn't that what you want to hear? You want to hear that, oh my gosh, that was so amazing. I just want more of it, right? Like, if you're the cook, there's nothing better that you can hear than that. So if you're the universe and someone appreciates everything you've given them and they just want more of it, then you are responding to that person, right?
Totally. Asking for more is an act of gratitude. Seriously. Like, and it's such bizarre programming that we have, but it makes sense, right? When people have come from different times. We live in times now where we're able to create abundance in our lives that we couldn't before, right? Like, I work online. I can work with anyone around the whole wide world. I work on social media. I can run a course inside a group that can have 10 people or 100 people or 1,000 people in it. It's the same amount of time for me. Gone are the days when you necessarily had to exchange time for money. You did your 9 to 5, you got some overtime if you could, you paid off your house. Like, that was the life, that was the dream. I was raised by a single mother on a reception wage. Like, it's like, I get it, that's what I grew up with. But over time I realized that it's a different time now. So we have PayPal. Someone can pay me from anywhere around the world in real time. I can live stream and I can help them no matter where they are, no matter what time zone they're in, and I can bring value to their life. And so I think it's changing. The way that we work is changing. The way that we can create an income is changing. The way that we can do life, you know, we can travel and also work. And that wasn't always possible. And so I think we're holding on to a lot of stories that actually aren't relevant to the time that we live in. Our beliefs are still catching up with our reality.
Can you talk a little bit about, even your language is very different from mainstream business, where you use the word, I get to help somebody and I'm a messenger, not a marketer. Like, can you just talk around that? Because that's also very unique, I think, to you.
Yeah, I'm really lucky that I never sort of learned the traditional ways of doing business. So I didn't have a whole lot to unlearn. But I talk about being a messenger, not a marketer, because I'm here to make a difference in the world. And I believe in this kind of, I guess, law of exchange, where if I put really awesome, positive things out into the world and I don't block, it's like the yin and yang, like the balance that naturally happens if we don't mess with it. Like, things will naturally find, you know, is it homeostasis? Is that the word? Like, you know, things will naturally find balance. And so it's like what you teach with the masculine and feminine. You move into your feminine, he naturally moves into his masculine. You don't make him do it. You kind of create that effect, cause and effect. And so I believe that if I don't block that kind of abundance that wants to come in as a result of the abundance of good stuff I put out, then that balance will naturally happen. So I'm not necessarily going, oh, I'm out there, I've got to build wealth, I've got to figure out how. I'm kind of going, well, how can I do a lot of good in the world and not block the awesomeness from coming back, and take my guidance and price my things based on what price feels good for me to charge for this, and basically doing it all based on what feels, that's literally, you know, how I do business is what feels good. And I realized for a lot of people that sounds mental. But
well, it's revolutionary. Really?
Yeah, I guess all the really cool ideas sounded a bit mental at the start, right? So I get to help people. That's what I do. I make a difference for a living. I mean, I've got some things that I've learned, just like you know, both of you, you've learned some things along the way through being interested in stuff and exploring stuff and embodying it and being a mad scientist and kind of going, how can I explore this more? How can I pull this apart? And I think gone are the days of you needing to be an expert on a pedestal or a guru on a mountaintop. I think that you can, for me, it's more like this concept of being a mad scientist where it's like, it's always just, how can I explore this more? How can I talk about this in different ways? How can I pull this apart more? And you bring people on that journey with you. And just like you guys would have, you know, throughout all these courses you've created and everything that's in soul-driven motherhood that is so incredibly life-changing, it probably all just felt like you're just talking about stuff that you kind of know, that's just kind of innate and that you're just doing in your lives. And people are like, this is amazing. And it really helps people. And people see value in that. And that gets to be your work in the world. And it's just beautiful. And I think everybody gets to do their work in the world. I guess that's my take on purpose, right? Like we put purpose on a pedestal. It's this thing we've got to figure out and we've got to kind of nut it out and have a plan. And there's going to be this like, you know, moment where I'm just going to know. And I don't think that's how it works. I think it's just you follow the breadcrumbs of those kind of, what your intuition tells you is to come next, and your job is to just get really brave about it and get your human stuff out of the way and do that work. And it's about who you become in the process. For me, I believe my desires are divine guidance. The universe gets me to do what I'm here to do by making me want things. And so, but we're kind of taught that our desires are bad and greedy and all of that. And I'm like, well, actually, if the universe was here to, like, the universe was trying to get us to do something, doesn't it make sense that they make us want to do it? like we're supposed to, like, procreate so they make sex feel good. Like, that makes sense, right? And to be like that with business, like, what feels really good for me to do? Well, then that's what I'm supposed to do.
What do you say to the woman who's feeling a little bit sticky on that? And she's like, oh, I kind of want to do this thing, but I'm feeling, you know, funky or weird, or nobody's going to want it, or who am I to, or I'm not allowed to, or what if it doesn't go anywhere, like that narrative, which I'm sure you come across a lot, although maybe you don't. I don't know.
No, all the time. All the time.
Okay. Because I know that's a conversation we have in soul-driven motherhood often, is there's a lot of very creative, inspiring and intelligent women within the community of Nourishing the Mother. And so largely a lot of conversations, as you would know, because you're in there in soul-driven motherhood, happen around, oh, I want to do this thing and my heart is calling, and then there feels like all the things and the reasons why I can't. Or I feel super icky about saying I want to charge someone for this thing. So I'm just wondering if you can talk about that.
Yeah, okay, cool. So it all boils down to, if I had to say it in a sentence, it is that you wouldn't want it if you couldn't have it. So not everybody is called to do what you are called to do. If you are called to do something, then you've kind of been like chosen to do it in a way. And that everything that's happened in your life up until this point has been tooling you up. I look back at everything, even the awful things that have happened in my life. I'm like, every bit of it has been tooling me up. I've been collecting my tools to do this work that I'm here to do now. And I don't know what work I'll be doing in 5 years or 10 years. And that's just fine by me, because the universe will kind of show me. I'll know, I'll figure it out. I'll follow the breadcrumbs. And along the way, I'll build character and resilience and skills and wisdom and relationships that will help me. And I can help a hell of a lot more people in bigger and more powerful ways now that I earn good money than I could before. So me charging for my services makes perfect sense, because it means I can have more support. You know, I have people that help me around my house and people that help me in my business. I didn't always. I built that up as my income allowed for it. But in doing it all for free, I couldn't do that. I wouldn't have the support, you know, to be able to do the things that I do in more powerful ways now. And it has value in people's lives. So you wouldn't want it if you couldn't have it. The universe doesn't give you a desire without also giving you the ideas and the resources to bring it to life. So this is what happens. We have our desires. We go like, you know what, I actually really want that life. I really want whatever it is. You want freedom, you want success, you want money, you want to travel, you want to speak on stages, you want to write a best-selling book, whatever the thing is. You get this desire, and then we question whether we're worthy of having it, right? And then you get these ideas, and we question whether they're good ideas or whether anyone would be interested. And I look at it a little bit differently in that my desires are divine guidance. That's the universe telling me where we're going next. It's a premonition. Like, my desires, they're not a vision, they're a premonition. Like, I know that's what's meant for me if it's what I see in my mind. So when I saw myself living on the water, I'm like, I wasn't earning an income that was anywhere close to getting me living on the water. I live on this kind of like lake system, right? And that was crazy at the time to think that I could create that. And I remember sort of half jokingly saying, well, I'd better write a bestseller then. And then getting this sense in my body of like, no, that's what you're going to do. You're going to write a bestseller and you're going to live by the water. And it was like this premonition. I'm like, okay. Whereas, of course, like, my human self could have sat there and questioned that and gone, you're never going to live by the water. You know, you're the daughter of a single mother on a reception wage and from the country and la, la, la. So we get these desires and then we get these ideas to bring them to life, but then we question the ideas whether they're any good. Whereas I kind of go, well, who am I to question an idea that the universe gave me? Because that's something much wiser than I am. So all I have to do is just follow the guidance, pick up the breadcrumbs, bring the thing to life, make the thing, learn what I need to learn, be the hands on the keyboard that types the words that kind of come through when I let my brain and my what ifs get out of the way, and then see what I'm capable of creating. It's quite magical, really.
God, I love that. It's so profound and courageous too. You know, to bust past all of the layers of all the reasons why, you know, you can't, in inverted commas.
Get role models. It's important, isn't it, to see those that are, so that you know it's possible. Because sometimes I think we don't know what, I mean, you're a trailblazer, but I would say that's very unique, that a lot of us would need inspiration to know that's something we can do. Like, it's part of your genius, right?
Yeah, so that's how I use social media. I use it like a vision board, right? So it's filled with people who are embodying and living what I want to let my subconscious know is possible for me. So as I scroll, it's not just like mindless crap. I've unfollowed all of that. This is the thing, we can give social media a bit of a hard time and say, you know, it's toxic and all of that, but it's the most customizable thing ever. Like, everything that's in your feed, you're kind of letting it be there. It's a choice. So I treat it like a vision board. I don't make vision boards on the wall anymore. It's my social media feed. So I follow, if I'm like, I want something, I want an epic relationship, well, I want lots of, you know, Julie Tenner vibes in my feed, and and I want to be an incredible parent. Like, it's you guys and all these other people. Like, this is why we listen to podcasts like this. This is why we tune into energies of incredible people, because it's sending messages to our subconscious mind. It's actually really quite powerful, and it really works, because if your subconscious mind doesn't believe you can have it, then it'll make sure you don't have it, because it's trying to protect you from all the bad things that you think that it thinks are going to happen when you get there. Like, I remember when I realized I had this belief that wealthy people don't have happy marriages. And I went, whoa, okay, that's not very good. Don't want to hold on to that belief. Where did that come from? And I realized that all the wealthy people I knew did have miserable marriages. So I filled my feed up with wealthy people with great marriages. Like, I set about a project of going, how do I find these people and how do I fill my feed up with them?
So delicious. I have 2 more questions. Are you up for that? Have you got time for that?
Oh, hit me. Let's do it.
All right. Do you have to have a plan?
Oh, a container. You taught me this, like the masculine container that the feminine can kind of fill up and swirl around inside of. So I have.
Yeah, but even with business, like, you know, this whole, you have to have a plan, and like, often women will go, but I have this desire to do this thing, and the husband will be like, I mean, this is obviously very stereotypical.
Yeah.
So, you know, take whatever format this is for you and your personal relationship of like, yeah, but what does that actually mean, and is that going anywhere? Like, do you have to have a plan, do you think, to launch off at any point in time?
Well, I guess do you have to have a plan? The plan might be that I'm going to do what my soul tells me to do every day, right? The plan doesn't have to look like a business plan. I never had a business plan. I think trying to have like a business plan can really slow you down, because by the time you've written it, you could have already created everything that's on it. So I think there's really something to be said for just taking action in the moment. I like to have some degree of structure. Like, I plan out my week. I plan what I'm going to do each day. But within that, there's space for me to flow around. Like, I know I'm going to live stream every day at, say, 2:00, but I don't know what I'm going to live stream about until that day. So that's what I mean by create the container for you to swirl around in. So have systems that support you, not stifle you. I think a lot of the time people sort of build themselves a box. They're like, I have to have a niche and I have to, plan everything out. I'm like, don't build a box, build a scaffold. Build something you can stand on and build from. But don't box yourself in with a plan, because this is the thing. In super mode, we want to plan. You've got to let your wild woman lead. This is probably going to be one of the biggest things that come from this. You have to let your wild woman lead. When you're in wild mode, she's the next level version of you. She knows what you need to do to get to your next chapter, your next stage of life, where you have the things that you see yourself having in those kind of like dreams and those visions, right? Those premonitions, I call them. She knows, but she's not interested in planning because she's not interested in detail. She's the CEO. You're superhuman when you're in super mode. She's the operations manager, right? So let your wild woman decide what you want. And then when you're in super mode, like maybe write some sort of a list of actions you're going to need to take. The problem happens when we're in super mode and we want something tangible. So we're like, okay, I'm going to make a plan. But we're not making a plan based on what the wild woman decided. We think she's crazy. She needs to just be put in a cage and just let me take care of these toots. Like, the masculine super mode comes in and goes, don't worry about her. She's reckless. And a lot of people are running
the sensible one.
Yeah. So a lot of the time people are running their lives and businesses in super mode, when I think we actually need to be really brave and let our wild woman lead, and that will take you to really quite magical places.
I love that, hardcore. So my last question is, when you're thinking about container rather than long-term plan, is like, I even loved when you were talking about your vision before and you're like, I don't know what I'm going to be doing in another 5 years or 10 years. I'm like, do you have to know what you're doing in 5 years or 10 years? Like, do you think there's a point at which it's ever just going to run out that you're like, well, that's it. I've burnt it out now. It's all gone.
No.
Yeah, good. So tell me about that.
It's just an ongoing adventure. I mean, I kind of like that I don't know where it's going to be in 5 years or 10 years, because it's when you blow your own mind, when you allow yourself to blow your own mind of what you can create, you kind of collapse time. Like, I thought that I would write a book around about when I turned 40, and that was when I was like 34. Well, but by the time I turned 35, I'd written it. Like, I just decided you can collapse time. You can bring it all forward. You don't have to wait. You don't have to wait till your kids are at school before you can do anything. My son is 3. We've started to homeschool, but he would have been going off to preschool next year. If I had have waited to build this business, I started getting really serious about my business when he was about 6 months old. And that's when I, got myself a business coach and got serious about it and started really building a good income and all of that, building a following. And so in that time, in those 3 years or so, I've built something that's really kind of great. Whereas if I had have waited until next year, I'd be starting from scratch. So you just don't have to wait. Just anything that you're telling yourself you have to wait for, I just don't believe that's true. I think it's really cool how my kids see what I'm doing. My daughter asks about it, and, she's learning about writing, and I explained to her about how, she might write books one day like me, and she asked about how I wrote that. And I think it's really cool that my kids get to see what I'm doing. I don't tell myself a story that I must sacrifice my dreams in order to be a good mother for them. Again, it comes back to sacrifice, right? I want them to, I can't tell them that they can achieve anything in the world and to go after their dreams if I'm just sitting on mine. The best thing I can do is model it for them. And so you don't have to wait.
I love that so hard. And that's what I love about you is I can come to you and be like, so here's the belief I have, and you're like, really? That's not how I see it at all. And I'm like, oh, that's so great. I love that. That's how I want to see the world too. Like, I just think that's that sense of freedom as well that I really do relish in the way that you see the world and in the work that you do, because you're living what you preach. And I actually think that's the teacher to have, isn't it? Not the one who talks the talk but doesn't walk the walk.
Well, that's the cool thing about working with a coach, right, is that, like, I can kind of say to my clients, this is what I see for you because I feel no fear for you. So having a coach that can look at, you know, what you want to do and go, well, I can see this clearly because I'm not clogged up by fear for you. Like, I look at you guys and I'm like, there is, like, no limit to what you can create. And when you're in bear mode, it's really hard to see that because all you see is limits because you're hitting your edges. And Bridget has taught me so much about edges, and we've had some beautiful messenger conversations lately about it, where I've been like, I'm finding my edges, like in parenting. And I think as we grow, we're shown where our edges are so that we can breathe them open. And it's exactly the same in business. It's exactly the same in everything, really. Like, we go, okay, here's my edge. And instead of taking it as evidence that I can't do this, you just go, I found an edge. I get to breathe that open. I get to expand that. Where can I expand my edges? That's been huge for me. Mm-hmm. And so this is so cool about how the stuff we learn about parenting can really be brought into our business. Like, I've brought that into my work. And the stuff I've learned about relationships and masculine and feminine energy as well, everything gets to feed into each other. Everything that you learn in business is going to help you, you know, you'll use that in your parenting. And it's just divine how it all gets to grow together. We don't have to sacrifice one for the other. It's just not how it works. You aren't given a desire and then told you have to give something up in order to have it.
I love that so much. So is there anything that you feel called to share with our beautiful listeners before we do our wrap up today?
Oh, so many things. Just that sense of overwhelm, like that. I just want to kind of acknowledge how, you know, I can sit here and rattle off a whole bunch of things and it can sound a bit like, but how, you know, but I'm just over how, where do I start? And I think that when you're on a journey of growth, that feeling doesn't really ever go away, that wobble. So if you're kind of feeling that wobble of where you're halfway between who you're being and who you're becoming, like, that's growth, right? And I did this post the other day about how when you're stepping from a jetty onto a boat, when the jetty is still but the boat is moving, and you've got 1 foot on the jetty and 1 foot on the boat, and it feels that really wobbly feeling, and you sort of want to just, like, you need to sort of quickly jump over onto the boat because you've got 1 foot on each. It feels a bit unsafe. And that's kind of how I describe the feeling between who you're being coming. So you've got 1 foot in who you're being, which is still uncertain. I know this. I know who I am. I know who I've been being, even if I don't like it. Even if there's heaps of stuff about it I'd like to change, it still feels certain. And the foot that's on the boat, which is the moving part, is who you're becoming. That feels completely uncertain. You don't know who that is. You don't know what comes with that. And so this wobble. So it's like you can either kind of pull your foot back and retreat back to who you've been being, or you can just step the other foot and get onto the boat. And even though it's moving, it still feels more stable because you're fully in that. And that's that period of growth. And the wobble never really goes away. But the thing is, when you embrace a wobble, you can turn it into a dance. And so it's just like this constant dance of who you're being and who you're becoming, and that's growth. And it's, if you can embrace it, then really quite magical things will happen. But you'll know if you feel called. Otherwise, you're just going to stand on the jetty watching the boats go past and going, after a little while, you're going to go, this is ridiculous, get me on a damn boat.
That's like the best metaphor ever. Oh, my God. So good.
It is such a great one. All right, so we have some 3 rapid-fire questions that we ask everyone that we interview. Are you ready?
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
Okay, first one is a time in your life where you've experienced a wound and you've turned it into your wisdom.
I suppose probably when my marriage ended, It's probably where I learnt my biggest lesson about planning, because I had this life plan. I had this man who I'd kind of like shoehorned into the position of being my husband. And we had our first kid, and we were going to have our second kid, and we were going to have our white picket fence. And I had this whole plan for exactly how our life was going to go. And then the universe ripped it out from under me with this email I received from a woman that he'd been seeing. And my whole plan just kind of, the universe ripped it up and set it on fire in front of me, and I found myself with no plan at all. And that's when life got really interesting, and when I started this journey that I'm on now. And I'm now head over heels in love with a man who slow dances with me in the kitchen. And before that, I didn't think slow dancing in the kitchen was real outside of the movies. And I now see that it is, and it's part of my everyday, and I feel so grateful for that. So I suppose that wound, and my ex-husband's one of my best friends now. I've done a whole lot of healing, and we're really super close, and we co-parent together really beautifully. And so that's probably where I learned about not hanging on too tightly to that life plan, because there might be something even better coming along.
Oh, I love that so much. Books that have been most influential for you, or alternatively, if that's too hard, the book or books that you wish every woman in this world would read?
Well, The Queen's Code, but I know you guys have spoken about that before. That's up there. But the one you're about to publish, I would say every woman in the whole wide world needs to read that, without a doubt. And also
Soul Modes
definitely is one. That's my book. And Creating Money, one that's probably a little bit of a left field that you guys might not have, or the people you might not have heard about. It's called Creating Money. It has this, it's like a blue cover with a little rainbow circle. I'll have to find out the author, and we can put it in the show notes. I don't remember the name of the author off the top of my head. But it's a really quite a spiritual book around abundance, and it was really quite big for me, and I recommend it to all of my clients.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, we love that title. Yeah. And the last one is, if you could have a billboard anywhere in the world on the superhighway of that part of the world, what would your billboard say?
It might be you're not broken, you're just in bear mode. And he's not an a-hole, you're just in wild mode. But yeah, probably that you wouldn't want it if you couldn't have it. It's probably that.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, your desires are divine guidance. It's follow the breadcrumbs. It's all of that. I'd have to find an eloquent way to put that on a billboard. But it's that. That's what I wish everybody would know.
Heaven. So can you please share with us how all of our listeners can find you, your work, and connect with you? And please include books, socials, website, all the things.
Yeah, if you just search Carlie Maree on Facebook and Instagram, you'll find me. I have 2 pages on Facebook. One's just called Carlie Maree, and one is called Soul Modes with Carlie Maree. So if you're particularly interested in the Soul Modes work, I have a whole bunch of Soul Modes mentors that I'm training, and they share their content on there as well. Or if you're interested in my coaching work, that's on the Carlie Maree page on Instagram. And my book is called Soul Modes. And if you search the Soul Modes movie on Facebook or YouTube, there's a Netflix-style documentary about that work, which is really cool. Mm-hmm. And my podcast is called Go Hack Yourself, which you'll find on all the podcast places.
So good. Thank you so much for sharing your very precious time and energy and incredible wisdom and insight with us. It's such a gift and a joy, and we feel very grateful to have you here in this space. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carlie.
It's truly an honour. I audibly squealed when I got the message saying we'd like you to be on the podcast. I might have done a little dance, so I'm just it's a little bit of a dream. So thank you for having me.
Oh, so gorgeous. So Bridgie, you going to wrap us up?
Yeah. So it's next with you, Jules.
thepleasurenutritionist.com.
And
to connect with you, Bridgie.
Yeah, suburbansandcastles.com. To connect with us, it's nourishingthemother.com.au, and also Nourishing the Mother on Facebook and Instagram. Remember to nourish the woman to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
And if you want to support Nourishing the Mother and all the late nights, the early mornings, the blood, sweat and tears we pour into our art, then please go to patreon.com/NTM podcast and become our patron. As a patron, you're helping all of the cost of operating this podcast, the hosting, the editing, the transcription, helping all of that be completely covered, and joining a community who are all about honouring our journeys and continuing to open. The more support we have, the longer we can last. So become a patron. We'd love to have you. Go to patreon.com/NTM podcast. We literally couldn't do this without you. Thank you so much for listening, and please share this podcast with anyone you think it would be medicine for.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives.
Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavour to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.